my co-host. Thank you so much for joining us for day 2 of the National Media Literacy Week. I'm Jenny Garman, the Legal and Government Specialist with the Kansas City Public Library, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Miranda. I don't know if you want to say hi, Miranda. So Kansas City.
Hey, y'all. Sorry. I'm going to be typing the transcription and captions today, but I might get a little bit behind because I'm doing it manually. But after this program's over, we will have a recording available with captioning. So keep an eye out for that. But if you need captions, feel free to turn them on and watch me type quickly.
Great. Thank you, Miranda. Thank you so much. So Kansas City Public Library is a proud partner of the National Association of Media Literacy Educators. Literacy education is part of our mission to be a doorway to knowledge for all people, and we are delighted to serve here in Kansas City, Missouri. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera so we can focus on the slides here because there's a lot of information to share today. This presentation would simply not be possible without the amazing resources that, namely the News Literacy Project, First Draft, the Stanford History Education Group, and others provide. You'll see that I've used a lot of their materials from their websites and from webinars and sessions throughout this year. 2 key takeaways from today's session are that you can analyze on your own and you can find help in a lot of places. I'll have resources to share with you in a follow-up email, and you can find more at kclibrary.org. So we're looking at the analyze facet of media literacy today. What I'll cover first is, what are we analyzing? And then talk about how we can analyze. We're analyzing what we see in the media, and that can mean social media, online news, print media, just about anything we can take in as information, entertainment, and sometimes both. We don't seem to be able to agree on much these days, but one of the things a vast majority of us can agree on is that misinformation is a huge problem. 1 in 5 of us think we might be spreading misinformation, but over half of us think that it is our family and friends who contribute to misinformation. What is misinformation? Here's how the News Literacy Project defines it. False or misleading information that is created and or shared regardless of intent to deceive. But we also need to be aware of disinformation, false or misleading information that is knowingly and intentionally created and or shared in order to deceive. A key reminder for me to distinguish misinformation is that misinformation can be a mistake, while disinformation is deliberate. You might have noticed a distinct drop in the use of fake news recently, and that is on purpose. We use misinformation or disinformation instead. And you'll see that the News Literacy Project calls out that misinformation, even when it is just meant to be funny, can be part of that system overload when we try to find credible information. Let's talk a bit more about the different types of mis and disinformation. First Draft is an excellent organization when you want to learn more about misinformation and disinformation. This graphic helps us to understand those types. We'll see examples of satire that's created with no intention to cause harm, but has the potential to fool. False context, when genuine content is shared with false contextual information. And manipulated context, when genuine information or imagery is manipulated to deceive today. We might have some ideas about what prompts people to share misinformation or disinformation. The News Literacy Project has grouped the reasons here, and I can tell you that money is a big factor. Who shares misinformation? This takes us back to the start with that polling information of, is it me? Is it you? Yes, it is. We are the ordinary people in this News Literacy Project breakdown, but there are many other types of propagators. I want to focus on the bottom part there, the malicious actors and trolls, because maybe you haven't heard about who they are. You've heard trolls before and you're not quite sure what that means. We are in the Halloween season, but it's not anything to do with that. Trolls are people who create fake personas and accounts to share misinformation and disinformation. They typically also create bots, which are automated programs that amplify the message that trolls want to send. You'll learn a lot more about who shares misinformation and disinformation and why in a documentary called Trust Me. I'll go into that a bit later in the program. Ordinary people, like me, like to laugh, and we like to share what makes us laugh. Satire, as mentioned earlier, is funny, and it is also part of the misinformation landscape. What could go wrong? Well, it turns out that not everyone realizes when they are sharing a satirical post or story. The Babylon Bee, the graphic highlights the story there. This is part of the study from the Ohio State University in August 2019. What I'm showing with this graph and sharing this graph is that this is something that's applicable to all of us. We're all susceptible to misinformation. We can all mistake satire as something that's real. This retweet of a Babylon Bee story by President Trump is one high-profile example. But you can see I've circled in red that the Babylon Bee highlights for themselves that they are fake news you can trust. And I'm open to questions or anything like that. It's not too formal. Please feel free. If I'm going too fast or anything, just let me know. Misinformation and disinformation and their effects are nonpartisan. They don't belong to just one party, and neither does fact-checking and critical thinking. Here's an example of manipulated content. Someone shared this doctored photo on Facebook, and lots of news outlets called it out. If you try to find that manipulated image online now, you'll see this warning from Facebook that say that independent fact checkers say the photo or image has been edited in a way that could mislead people. And one of the fact checkers is the AFP United States. Here's an example of false context, highlighted as part of the News Literacy Project's Viral Rumor Rundown. I really highly recommend the News Literacy Project's Viral Rumor Rundown, just so you have a better look at what's happening. You can see that there's this on the left-hand side, it's supposed to be Trump's America versus Biden's America. And again, a look at Build Back Better on the right-hand side. These photos have nothing to do with any of those topics. And it also highlights the power of a reverse image search, which we'll talk about later too. This slide might be a little bit controversial, but it's something to talk about as we seek to analyze what we see, hear, and read. What is opinion? What is fact-based reporting? And can we tell the difference? Tucker Carlson is pretty well known as a media personality. His show airs on Fox News. It's called a current affairs program or something similar. This is a snapshot directly from the Fox News website, spelling out that Tucker Carlson is the host of the Fox News Channel's flagship primetime cable news program, talking about his powerful analysis and his important perspectives. And in July 2020, according to Wikipedia, Tucker Carlson Tonight broke the record for the highest rated program in US cable news history, with an average nightly audience of over 4 million viewers. In that same year, Fox News lawyers defended Carlson in court, persuading a US district court judge that given Mr. Carlson's reputation, any reasonable viewer arrives with an appropriate amount of skepticism about the statements he makes. But the general tenor of the show should inform a viewer that Carlson is not stating actual facts about the topics he discusses, and is instead engaging in exaggeration and non-literal commentary. You can really find out, again, Miranda covered the wiki page for Wikipedia yesterday, and you can find out a lot more about Tucker Carlson Tonight on that Wikipedia page. This is a really good time, though, to stop talking about misinformation and disinformation and start talking about analysis. Being those reasonable viewers, we can be part of the solution. I've shared the full definitions of information literacy, media literacy, and news literacy on these next slides. But the most important things I hope you'll take away is that we can defeat misinformation and disinformation with these literacies. They have 4 things in common. Access, which Miranda talked about yesterday, meaning essentially there's no barriers to your research. Critical thinking, which is basically not accepting what you see, hear, or read at face value, taking that step back, especially when your emotions are engaged. Analysis, which is unpacking the information, asking questions and finding answers. And judgment. Do I believe it? Is this true? Do I share it? You'll hear me say it again. Media literacy is for everyone. There are many resources available for young students, teens, and adults. And perhaps one of the most important facets is realizing that your clicks, likes, and shares translate into money for someone, the platform or the creator. And we can be thoughtful about assessing the purpose and potential impact of the media. Namely, has great questions to ask, and we'll go through those in just a bit. I've mentioned news literacy a lot in this program because so much of our confusion about what is going on in the world has its roots in what we believe is news. How can we discern what is reliable and credible? Let's look at a few ways to meet these challenges head on. We'll start with Namely's definition of analyzing. Analyzing media content is the process of asking questions about a piece of media in order to identify authorship, credibility, purpose, technique, context, and economics. They include questions you can set out to answer about the author, that author's expertise. And I mentioned earlier the who paid for this, but also realizing that your clicks and likes and shares are paying for that product. I enjoyed attending a newslet camp earlier this week and was happy to share these tips from a CNN journalist on my page on the Kansas City Public Library's website. The journalist, like us, has to take a step back when her emotions are engaged by a post or a story. She asks these questions when she sees a social media post that has grabbed her attention. Who is this person? Who is this poster? What is the photo that they've shared showing? What is the poster's point of view? Is there a side they're on? Is there a bias there? What is the larger story here? Are there any other news outlets reporting this story? And then what are the details on the story's page? Some of the questions that she brought up that really resonated with me particularly are, does the page's logo match the organization's logo? Does the URL point to a real news organization? She used the example of abcnews.co versus abcnews.com. Sometimes you really just have to examine the rest of that story. I included that resource and many more on the page for the Kansas City Public Library, including tools for reverse image searches. And that tutorial from the Checkology Virtual Classroom. Again, these are classroom-based tutorials, but they really are for everyone, free for anyone to access. The Stanford History Education Group had a great program over the summer called Sorting Fact from Fiction. And it was the first time I was introduced to civic online reasoning. And these 3 questions that roll many of the critical questions all together. Who is behind the information? This question highlights our inclination to judge a book by the cover. Does it look professional? Does it look appealing? When really we need to dive much deeper and examine the expertise of the author, determine whether or not they are following professional journalistic standards. And like we've talked about before, what's the bias or what is the potential bias of the author or of the poster? The second question, what's the evidence? We really need to be able to evaluate the reliability and relevance of online information, and just simply showing both sides, even when there's one side that has the preponderance of the evidence, which is false balance, that's not fair and balanced. That's false balance. The third question is, what do our other sources say? And I've I've made that a little bit more casual by saying, before you verify it, use fact checking. Also use lateral reading, and Miranda brought this up the other day. One of my favorite ways of remembering to lateral read is to stop vertical reading. In other words, get off the page you were reading and scrolling, and open up new tabs so you can use keywords to find out what credible sources might be reporting on the same subject. And also don't stop on your first page of results. Keep looking beyond that first page so you can be sure you're seeing a fuller picture. I've highlighted some fact check resources that are also on the library page I created, and also bias resources. Sometimes when you're researching a story, especially one that's especially controversial, All Sides is an excellent resource because you can see what are media sources on the left, the right, and those that are considered central. What are they saying about the same subject, about this? How are they covering the same story? And Ad Fontes Media is one of my favorite sites. If there's a new news outlet, maybe I've not heard of it before, or maybe I'm just trying to figure out which way is this particular media outlet leaning. It's great for figuring out how they fit on that spectrum. You can even drill down into particular articles, because just because one news outlet might lean left or right, sometimes articles can resonate different ways. And so again, I've highlighted several fact-checking organizations here, and this is what I was mentioning, that you can do research on your own. You can also lean on professional fact checkers. PolitiFact is part of a much larger organization, the International Fact-Checking Network. Their work highlights how media literacy is for everyone and for multiple facets of our lives. It affects our civic engagement, our financial well-being, health and wellness, and much more. I really love that the IFCN has a teen fact-checking network. They do really cool videos on YouTube, and they break down how they research a story or how they research a social media post. It's super helpful. They also have specific media literacy resources for seniors, for voting, and for Gen Z. Trust Me is a documentary you won't want to miss, and it's available for free on Canopy at the Kansas City Public Library with your library card. We'll have a discussion next month, and I hope you can join us for that. This is the documentary I mentioned earlier that shares stories about who creates misinformation and why, and how it can be a matter of life and death. And please continue to join us for Media Literacy Week. Liam will be with us tomorrow to dive deeper into the evaluate facet of media literacy, and Miranda will lead the create facet with a wiki project on Kansas City newspapers. And I'll wrap up the week with a presentation on the news literacy projects, how to speak up without starting a showdown. That's everything I have for the presentation. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'd love to know if you have any questions or comments. If there's anything that you want to talk about. That went a lot faster than 20 minutes. So I'd like just to open it up to anyone.
Hi. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
I'm so excited to be here. Like I told you guys yesterday, I'm such a huge fan of you guys doing stuff every single day. I thought it was interesting though. I also love the ad fonts, like all of their resources. And I think one of the things that we often hear at Namely about that with like the feedback when people look at it is, that doesn't seem accurate with, Fox News seems like they're not, far enough to the right and here. And I was talking to Vanessa, the woman who created this, and she noted that it's all based on the actual online reporting and not the cable news reporting, which I thought was really interesting when you think about the difference sometimes between even a single network and the platform on which that information is being delivered, and kind of how that, the message is the medium from like a media studies perspective. So I thought it was, I always like to add that in there, because I know when people look at it, they say that doesn't seem right, but at the same time, I think as, all of us librarians like to say that sometimes you can have good sources with, that put out bad content. You can have sources that maybe aren't generally reliable that can put out good content. So it's never good to kind of generalize those things and to always dig deeper. So anyway, just wanted to add that because it's a constant I hear.
I really appreciate that, because we also have it at the library. We have a service called Newsguard that will flash up green if the site is generally regarded as reliable and credible, but they don't, just like there's a twist to that too, because they don't evaluate every story. They evaluate the site as a whole.
Yeah.
So you always have to be on guard.
I know, and it's hard because it's that slippery slope, right? Of like, how do you kind of, make sure that you're consuming good sources? And, sometimes the easiest way to do that is, I know we all have our preferred sources, right? And oftentimes they do, feed into our own biases or our own kind of, decisions we've made about certain information. So I think, it's so hard. I think evaluating information is so complex, and sadly, it's not a quick process. And so it's so hard for people to, want to put in the time and the effort to make it, to really do the work that they need to be doing when they're consuming information, which I think has led to so many of the problems that we have today. So, we always say those things. It's kind of like Wikipedia yesterday, right? Like those sites like Newsguard and some of those services are great when people are starting out and they're, kind of like beginner, media literacy people trying to kind of muddle their way through. It helps give them the direction, and then hopefully they'll, dig a little deeper into each individual story.
And part of what I'm hoping too is by sharing the information literacy and media literacy that these are sometimes jargony terms. Like, what do you even mean by that? Well, let's break it down and say, this is really what it's about.
Yeah, it's hard. It is our constant battle that, I think, I don't know if anybody watched our Amanda Knox event last night with Namely, but it's, we were laughing because she's doing media literacy and has no idea that she is talking about media literacy, because people don't know that it has a name, and we've assigned terms to it like fake news and disinformation and misinformation, but really the skill set is all media literacy, falls all under that umbrella. So yeah, trying to get awareness of, that's the name of it, but it is a little scary. It's a little academic, it's not easily digestible. So we'll get there someday.
Well, part of what I hope that we can do with schools that I know are involved with media literacy education is they have the students in the classroom, but sometimes the caregivers at home are left out of that equation. Where, well, what are you talking about? Well, why are you going to that website? Well, what is, and it's like everybody should have these tools. This is not limited to just the classroom.
Yeah, I know. I think it's interesting and it's hard, so I think especially from when we think about it from like a marketing perspective for media literacy, like how do we get, to our audience? Well, our audience is actually everybody.
Yes.
So it's like the worst, audience you could ever hope for when you're trying to, reach people. So, but
there's no gatekeeping with it. It's like, no, you all come. Let's go.
Yeah, everybody.
We want everybody to be there. But
awesome. Well, this is great.
Thank you very much. It's a lot to tackle. Analyze is a big chunk, and I know Liam is going to go more into the civic online reasoning and kind of showing people exactly how to do that tomorrow. So that's one not to miss for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited about that one. Well, I'm excited about all of them.
It's great to have a week to structure this, but to be able to tackle it that way. But I'd also love if anybody has any questions or wants to see some of the fact-checking videos or anything, we can take a look at that, or I can just put all of that into the follow-up email. We'll also have a survey in the follow-up email we'll help you'll take so that you can offer, here's some more programs I would like to see from the library, or I'd like you to take a deeper dive into this particular aspect of it. Because we could make that happen, but we want to do it because you want it, not because we think it's awesome. We'll think it's awesome because you do. Hey, Renee, how's it going?
Good. Could you walk us through reverse image search?
Yes. Let's see. Do you have an example?
No, I don't. It's come up as something that you should do, and when I've tried to figure out how to do it, I haven't had any luck. So
I probably could not do it better than the experts at News Literacy. So if you wouldn't mind, I'll go ahead and show you the tutorial.
Sure.
Okay, thanks. Give me just a minute. I'm going to share my screen again in about 2 shakes.
Hey, Checkologists, this is Peter from the News Literacy Project's education team, and I'm here today to teach you the basics of one of the most powerful digital verification skills you can have, something that helps you investigate the origins of images you find online, called reverse image search. Sounds complicated, but it's really not. Let's get started. Okay, so one of the first things you need to know about doing a reverse image search is that just like a regular web search, there are multiple tools or websites you can use to do this. So tineye.com is one reverse image search engine. There's a Russian one called yandex.com that's really good. And then Google, of course, has reverse image search functions. So for this basic reverse image search video, I'm going to stick with Google. It's the most popular. If you want to learn about some other tools you can use to do reverse image search, be sure to watch the advanced reverse image search tutorial. But for this one, let's start.
Jenny, I think we lost the sound.
That's what I was worried about. Hang on.
Verification skills you can have, something that helps you investigate the origins of images you find online,
good now.
called reverse image search. Sounds complicated, but it's really not. Let's get started. Okay, so one of the first things you need to know about doing a reverse image search is that just like a regular web search, there are multiple tools or websites you can use to do this. So tineye.com is one reverse image search engine. There's a Russian one called yandex.com that's really good. And then Google, of course, has reverse image search functions. So for this basic reverse image search video, I'm going to stick with Google. It's the most popular. If you want to learn about some other tools you can use to do reverse image search, be sure to watch the advanced reverse image search tutorial. But for this one, let's start out on google.com and go up here and click in the upper right and click images. We can also just go straight to images.google.com and you'll land on this same page. So to start to do a reverse image search, you need to click on this camera. And then there are 2 main ways to search by image. One is with the image URL or the image web address, and one is with the an actual copy of the image file you want to search. Okay, so let's start with the image URL and let me show you how this works. Let's jump over here to Twitter. Here's a tweet from someone I don't know. They're totally anonymous here on Twitter. They say they live in Canada. I'm not even sure if that's true, but they've got this picture here of trash all over a park, and they're saying that this is trash and plastic left behind by climate strike protesters, right? And it's kind of criticizing them, calling them losers because they left trash everywhere and they say they care about the environment. So let's right-click on this image and go down here to this option in Firefox that says copy image location. Now if you're using other browsers, that language might be a little different, like copy image address, but you'll still be able to do it. So if you right click on the image, you can copy the image location. And again, every image on every website has its own web address that's used in the source code. So that's a different URL than the one up here in my browser address bar. And I'm going to go back to Google Images, put my cursor there and hit Control V, and then click search by image. And you can see, boom, done a reverse image search. It's gone and looked for that image all over the web. But before we analyze the results, let's go back and do this one the other way so you know how. If I click upload an image, now I need to go back to my picture and right click, but instead of copying the image location, I'm going to save the image to my hard drive. So here's the file name that Twitter's given this image, and I'm going to save it to my downloads folder. And I'm going to go back here and then I'm going to browse to that same folder and I'm going to select that file, and when I do, boom, it's done a reverse image search. Okay, so those are the 2 main ways that you can do this pretty much on any reverse image search engine you encounter. If you use Chrome, there is a quicker way to do a Google reverse image search. So here's that same tweet in Chrome, and if I hit my right click menu in Chrome, because it's Google's browser, I have the opportunity to search Google for the image directly in my right-click menu, which is just a shortcut to do the same thing. So here are those results. Okay, So now I'm going to take a look at some of these results. Let me hop back over here to my search results here. So here is an algorithm's guess. This is Google's algorithm's guess as to what this picture is, but you can't really trust that because it's basing that on how other people have uploaded the image to the web. So sometimes viral rumors go really broad and the algorithm gets fooled. So you can't necessarily trust that. If I scroll down here, it's given me some visually similar images. Now remember, a reverse image search is just looking for similar patterns and colors across the web, and it tries to match it exactly, and then it gives you some others that it thinks are similar. Okay, so it has found exact matches on a number of websites, and I'm not just going to click on any website here because I don't really know what good.is is, and I don't know what Indy 100 is, but I do know that factcheck.org is a credible fact-checking organization. TheGuardian.com is a major news outlet that has standards. So let me go to fact check, and right away I can see from the headline that this viral photo falsely targets climate strike protesters, and it's going to give me the complete story, and it falsely identifies it as being from the climate strike. So this entry will tell me exactly where and when that image came from, and I've effectively debunked it. So again, using reverse image search can be a really powerful way to get to the bottom of images you see online, figure out where they came from, sometimes even get to the very original instance of the image, and helps you not get fooled. So I hope this has been helpful. And again, if you want to learn more, watch the advanced tutorial. Thanks.
So that was, again, in a rundown, he is amazing. And they have more tutorials like that on I don't work for them. It sounds like I work for them, but I don't. They just have so many great resources. I turn to them a lot. And I wanted to share really quick, this is the page I mentioned hang on one moment. Bear with me just for a second, because I just wanted to show you this page. I call it Critical Thinking and Fact Finding. And that's exactly where I picked up the tutorial, because I wanted to make it easy for people to find. And these are the Google images where you can use a search by image option, that TinEye that he mentioned. And also if you have video where you're like, just a second here, there's a Chrome extension you can use to research that also. On this page too, I've highlighted information about cognitive biases, also search engine algorithms, because part of what happens when we do research online is we get kind of trapped into our own echo chamber. We get recommenders, we get, hey, you should look at this. You searched for this. You might also really want to take a look at that. And also the 5 types of bias in news articles. We're not the only ones with bias, right? There's the news stories, news outlets can also have bias. Authors can have bias. So we would want to be aware of that too. Give me one more second here. This is I also just wanted to highlight too, this is when you click on that curated list, because there's so much to share about what's available. I went ahead and put together, and there's lots of these online. You can find a whole bunch of these, but if you wanted a book, or if you wanted another resource like Newseum, Ed, this is another great resource where you can find more information about that. Of course, the News Literacy Project, but lots of books that you can check out from our library that just fit with this topic, fit with understanding what are logical fallacies, what is my bias, and kind of examining yourself that way. So I hope that was helpful, Renee. Did you want to check out anything else? I like trying things out and figuring them out on the fly. It's good.
No, I thought that was great. Thank you.
I'm a big fan. Thank you. I don't have anything else for the presentation. Somehow I thought that was going to take a lot longer. But I hope what this gives you back is some time on your lunch hour, and that also that you will come back tomorrow for Liam's deeper dive into evaluating online sources of information, evaluating media. Oh, thanks, Tracy. Thanks. Thank you, everybody. And we'll have this recording, and we'll have a follow-up email going out to you. I'll stay on a little bit longer if any of you have any other questions or want to try something else out. But I just really appreciate you being with us today. Thank you so much. Yeah, this is officially Ask Me Anything time if you want it. So we can, Miranda, you can go ahead and stop recording if you like, or I can stop recording.